for sure, online, mobile, e-commerce is a great area for us. We were super excited to launch web support. We have hundreds of thousands of sites supporting Apple Pay. Some great retailers are supporting Apple Pay on the web. And so we've seen a lot of early traction there. I think it's also really important to understand that when we look at transactions, if you look at where transaction growth is, and I think he was saying earlier, mobile is huge. And if you look at where online and offline, things like ride-sharing services, things like order ahead, things like ticketing, things like digital goods, that's a massive amount of transaction growth. And if you just step back and think about Uber for a minute, they're doing billions of rides per year. And you compare that from a transaction volume perspective to a traditional retailer, even many of the largest in the US don't make that many transactions. So it's important to do both in store as well as be covering things like mobile and in app. So I would say both are important. But what I would say in store that's important as well as a retailer, if you think about it, is particularly with you see what Amazon announced yesterday, right? We can enable retailers.
For people who didn't see, I'm assuming
yes,
you're
please.
talking about
Amazon
a physical store where you can pick an item off a shelf, walk out, and without standing in line or paying,
right.
And then it will be automatically charged to your Amazon account.
Exactly.
Yep.
So when we look at in-store evolving, right, being able to use what you would call the mobile rails or the in-app rails to complete transactions is something that we can enable for retailers using Apple Pay.
I thought you were going to announce an Amazon partnership, and my head was going to just explode off the stage. But why did it? So you started when you first launched 2 years ago. You started with in-store Apple Pay and also in-app. And I think part of the thinking around starting with in-app versus browser was you control the app experience on iPhones, and so that's a good place to start. Why didn't you launch browser at the same time, and what did you learn in the 2 years between launching in-app and browser that has helped with the launch?
Good question. So when we launched in-app, a lot of that was really driven by the fact that the way Apple Pay works today requires a secure element on our devices. That's where we store the tokenized payment credential. And it's a very, absolutely sort of the most secure way. It's a piece of hardware that sits on your iPhone or on your watch, or on your iPad. And so when we moved to mobile, we had to, desktop basically, we had to figure out a way to support Macs that didn't have secure elements. So the way we do that, as you probably saw from our announcement in September, is that we pair basically with an iPhone or an Apple Watch to do the authentication.
So if you want to pay on a Mac that doesn't have a secure element through Apple Pay, you have to also have an iPhone.
That's right, or an Apple Watch.
Or an Apple Watch, and you prove you are who you say you are.
Right, you do, again, biometric Touch ID, boom, it syncs and it's off. And so what we've learned, it's been great. When we launched in-app, what we see and what our partners tell us is we see 2 times more people completing a transaction, so 2 times the conversion rate. We are seeing that consistently as well in web. So our partners are telling us it's 60% faster to check out. It's 2 times the conversion rate on web as well as on in-app. And so we're seeing great uptake from our merchant partners rushing to implement Apple Pay.